turn the fork like this into the potato and then cut like that.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
got it there. You turn it back around.
That's how I
It's
do
in
it.
your gob, and there you go. Bob's your uncle. You've got potatoes. And
Welcome back to another one of my reaction videos. I'm going to be going to England in December to January area there, and so it'll be my first time visiting Britain, so going to check out some American versus British stuff and learn more about what it's like over there before I go. So thanks for joining, and then let's get going on this journey.
hear your accent and you are American, their ears might prick up a bit thinking, here comes a payday. Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to how we eat, dining etiquette. It's so important, especially when you're meeting your American family for the first time. I'm not talking from experience, maybe just a bit. Cultural differences around the dinner table don't just come down to the words we use, like chips versus fries, or the dishes that we serve. So, you know, America's pecan pie versus Britain's spotted dick. And that is an actual dessert, okay? Look it up, just not on your work computer. But it's also about some of the mechanisms that we use to get it into our mouths. I'm still talking about food. And also some of the customs and politeness norms that comes with the process of eating. And so without further crab rangoon, here are 5 ways that British and American eating etiquette is very, very different.
Let's see.
Whether you call it cutlery, like we do in Britain, or silverware or flatware, or in this case plasticware, because, you know, we are rationing, we can all agree that without them, meal times would be very, very messy, especially in America where they put sauce on everything. But the real question is...
I guess we do put sauce in everything, but man, it's so good with sauce. But then you have to think about the calories and the fat and all that, so pros and cons to everything.
We can all agree that without them, meal times would be very, very messy, especially in America where they put sauce on everything. But the real question is, how do we hold them? And this was part of my existential crisis after I moved to the United States, because I grew up learning the European style, or as it might be known here, the continental style. And when I say that, I'm referring to what is the official utensil etiquette, right? As opposed to the official American etiquette. And I'm going to show you, I think anyway, some of the differences. I personally don't have either etiquette completely down because, in my wife's words, I still eat like a toddler. But it mostly comes down to how we hold the fork. In Britain, you hold it kind of like that, I think. So you've got it, the end of it's touching your palm, and then you sort of grasp it with your thumb and your pointy finger. And
before we get to the part where he says American, I think I know I hold my fork just basically the opposite of how he's holding it right now. But let's see.
I think. So you've got it, the end of it's touching your palm, and then you sort of grasp it with your thumb and your pointy finger, and it's there for pointing downward, right? And you stick it into the potatoes or the strawberries or the spotted dick. And notice it's in my left hand. That's going to be important in a moment. And in the other...
Did he say spotted dick? I swore that's what he said before. What an interesting name for a dish. Oh, that's awesome.
Potatoes or the strawberries or the spotted dick. And notice it's in my left hand.
That's
going to be important in a moment. And in the other hand, you have your knife, right? Usually like this, with the pointy finger right there, and it's touching your palm again. So consistent on both hands, right? It's almost an extension of you. You're almost Wolverine, but from the United Kingdom or Europe. And then you do this, right? Usually at a lower level. You wouldn't be able to see it because my arms are off screen now, so I'll put them back there. And then you cut into the potatoes or the strawberries or the creamy spotted dick. You can come with custard. That's normal. And voila, and put it in your mouth. There's nothing on this. This isn't that scene in Hook where they eat invisible food. It goes this way round. Right, with the tines facing downward toward your tongue. In America, it's quite a bit different, right? So people will hold their fork like this, with the tines facing upward. In other words, to kind of scoop up the food, right? So they'll do that, and actually sometimes, not every time, I mean, I'm sure...
Yeah, so far I can confirm that he is correct. I never realized how we differ from just the United Kingdom to America here with how we hold our silverware, but Obviously it's a different culture, so and some things are different, so pretty cool to learn a new thing today. That's awesome.
Right, so people will hold their fork like this with the tines facing upward. In other words, to kind of scoop up the food, right? So they'll do that, and actually sometimes, not every time. I mean, I'm sure there are people that circumvent all of the things you hear in this very list, but sometimes Americans won't even use a knife, right? You'll just see them scoop something up, maybe a potato. We won't go through the entire list again. Put it in their mouth. If they want to cut up things in that way, sometimes they'll do it with the fork, right? Don't recommend it with plastic.
Yes. I have definitely done that. I remember my wife keep harping on me about use a knife, not the fork. Oh, so true. So true.
Maybe a potato. We won't go through the entire list again. Put it in their mouth. If they want to cut up things in that way, sometimes they'll do it with the fork, right? Don't recommend it with plastic forks. You can get through these pretty quickly if you do that. But if they do use a knife, they may turn the fork like this into the potato and then cut like that.
Oh, yeah.
You've got it there. You turn it back around.
That's how I do it.
It's in your gob, and there you go. Bob's your uncle. You've got potatoes. And that's what a lot of Americans do. My father-in-law, though, did this. He had it like that and like that. He'd turn it that way, and then like that. It sort of looked,
oh, yes. Don't you remember seeing that in a movie? He's holding like this. I swear it's like a meme, or not really a meme, but I've seen it in movies or TV shows or whatnot. Sometimes they'll hold it like that.
He had it like that and like that. He'd turn it that way, and then like that. It sort of looked, I should tell you that my in-laws were cavemen. But it was through those very cavemen / dear relatives of my wife that I was first introduced to our next entry.
Saying grace.
Yes, saying grace. This one is quite a tough entry in many ways because, in order to talk about it, I do have to somewhat generalize. And also, I don't have much data to back up what I'm about to say. It's more observationally driven, right? So when I lived in England for 27 years of my life, I don't say that with disdain. It was a good time. But in all that time, I don't really remember sitting down to a dinner function of any kind and really sort of saying grace beforehand. In other words, kicking off the meal with a sort of faith-based thanks. Now, part of that, and again, this is where the generalization comes in, so bear with me, but in England, we tend to be less sort of like publicly open, or just sort of even privately open, if you can be, among your family members about your religious beliefs. Whereas in the United States, I think people are more sort of proud of that, whatever their religious faith is. And so sometimes in some families, and this again could be regional, so I might well be generalizing, but some families, including the extended relatives that I married into, I didn't marry them, I married into the family. Some families, and I gather maybe quite a lot of families here in the United States, particularly at special events like Thanksgiving or maybe even a home.
Yeah, definitely Thanksgiving and Christmas. Yeah, he's totally correct. You see a lot of people saying grace in America on those days for sure. It's almost pretty much guaranteed for the most part.
I didn't marry them, I married into the family. Some families, and I gather maybe quite a lot of families here in the United States, particularly at special events like Thanksgiving or maybe even a homecoming of some kind, will sort of say grace before the meal, and there'll usually be one family member who stands up and says it on behalf of the entire group, and then you say amen and go about your way. For me, it was quite weird at first, I think. Now, I'm very respectful of other people's religious beliefs. I didn't really know what to do except just sort of sit there and then wait for it to be done.
Awkward.
And then, because I had half a mind on the turkey. So what are you going to do? And because I'm generalizing here, it's important for me to say that this is my experience. I'd be very interested to hear other people's experiences, other Europeans' experiences of coming here and maybe having to say grace when they're not used to it. Or, Americans that don't themselves practice
it's so different.
I've also heard it can go one step further here where the whole family holds hands. I definitely draw the line at that, especially right now. The best way that I can put this for British people watching back home is, in football, when somebody dies and they have a minute's silence within the stadium, and then when the minute's silence is up, they all erupt in applause and all of that. It's kind of like that, minus the applause. It's just an amen. But the energy after that is great because you all want to tuck into your food. And because the energy's so good, that leads us on to our next entry.
Table chatter.
Oh, I don't mind a bit of chatter and exceptionally weird noises. And at an American dinner table, you're going to get a lot of chatter. Usually, again, this is an...
He is completely right. You can walk into a restaurant here in America, and it could be everybody's like talking, like, and Americans seem to talk loud. I know I talk loud too sometimes, so something we do, I guess. But you go into a restaurant and it's get flipping loud, so dang loud that it's hard to even hear any conversation you're trying to have with the person in front of you or right next to you. So, yeah, so that definitely makes sense.
Mind a bit of chatter and exceptionally weird noises. And at an American dinner table, you're going to get a lot of chatter. Usually, again, this is another generalization, but on the whole, this is my experience. And I'm one of those people who doesn't think that Americans are always loud, as the stereotype dictates, but one exception tends to be in restaurants, right? I do hear the volume go up there as compared to Britain, where it feels like we're always battling with this war within ourselves to not air our dirty laundry in public. I'm not saying we don't talk at dinner tables, don't get me wrong. It feels observationally, once again, and again, there's no data on this. There's not somebody going around measuring the decibels in every restaurant in either country, especially right now because they're all closed. But that's my general experience of it. Now, I could be getting thrown off course a little bit here because, you know, my wife's family are really loud. Don't tell them I said that, although this is a public video. They know it's true. I've told them before, and that's why I've not spoken in a year. But here in America, you might be in a restaurant, sitting down with just one other person, trying to have a quiet, intimate conversation. And to your right, there's this really loud family with a 5-year-old running around with a stupid hat on that he got from the restaurant, right? So they're...
Yeah, that reminds me of the Burger King crown that kids would get and stuff like that here in America. I wonder if that's what he's referring to, or I'm sure there's other restaurants that give kids hats and stuff, so... Yeah, that's true.
You're right, there's this really loud family with a 5-year-old running around with a stupid hat on that he got from the restaurant, right? So they're further enhancing the volume of said family. And then on the other side, there's clearly what is a date happening. And the woman is just sitting there quietly, looking quite glum, while the man very audibly and haphazardly talks about all of the Fortune 500 companies he's worked for. And she stares into space, presumably thinking of all the ways that she can get out of there. But on the other hand, once you do get used to that sort of volume, it does add to the atmosphere, you know. And if you're already in a good mood and you enter somewhere where, you know, thousands, oh, that's a huge restaurant, hundreds maybe, where there's lots of people and they're in a good mood, and it just sort of bounces off the walls, you know. But speaking of restaurants, that brings us on to our next entry.
Server etiquette.
Servers. My heart does go...
What do you bet is going to be tips? It's going to be one of the server etiquette things, because here in America, we tip our waiters, our servers, or whatever you want to call them, waitresses. But in Europe, I heard they don't. So that's going to be different when I go over to England. And I got to remember, don't need the tip here. It's different. Don't really want to offend anybody, right?
Restaurants. That brings us on to our next entry. Servers. My heart does go out to all of the servers and anybody else to whom this applies around the world who can't go into work right now. And a huge thank you to delivery servers who are able to keep people fed who might need it. But, you know, back in peacetime when the restaurants were still open, there was quite a marked difference between, you know, British servers and American servers and the way they sort of conduct themselves at the dinner table while you're eating your dinner. In Britain, they're quite standoffish, and I know that's just a trait of British people in general, I get that, but they don't have the incentive, which we'll talk about in a minute, to constantly be coming back to your table and seeing how you're doing, checking if you need a refill on that water, because you probably won't get one anyway. I'm joking, of course you'll get a free refill on your water, just nothing else. Often, know this, if you want their attention, you're going to have to get their attention yourself, and that includes when it comes time to pay the bill. Whereas in the United States, and each restaurant has its different policy on this, you know, the waiting staff will come to your table every 5 minutes, usually, just to see how...
Yes, and it's so true sometimes, and just, you know it, they walk up, and they ask you how you're doing, and it's right when you have a mouthful and you can't really talk. You just mumble, you know. somehow they have particular timing with that. I just had to mention that.
In the United States, and each restaurant has its different policy on this. You know, the waiting staff will come to your table every 5 minutes, usually, just to see how you're doing. And it seemingly doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a seriously one-sided conversation about the Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah, they don't care.
They will still come over and go, "Hey, what's up? How's that tenderloin working out for you?" And there are a couple of big reasons, I think, that American serving staff do this. Firstly,
Tips.
the company often dictates it. It's seen as a kind of data-driven way of, having good customer service. But
Sounds like he's going to be talking about tips now, that's for sure. Because here in America, the waiters, waitresses will come over, like he says, it seems like every 5 minutes, and ask you how everything's going and see if you need a refill. And by doing that, it's more like a higher encouragement. The better service you get, the more you might tip them, right? They got to work for the tip. So that's the idea behind it, at least in my head, I guess. So
staff do this. Firstly, the company often dictates it. It's seen as a kind of data-driven way of, having good customer service. But having good customer service could well dictate this. Have they tried antifreeze with that? No. Well, he might go back to his milk phase eventually. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So the dreaded tip, or at least it was dreaded to me when I first moved to America. Actually, when I landed at Philadelphia Airport, this is the first time I remember having to sort of navigate the American tipping system because I bought a drink at a bar at that very airport. And having
a quick note with the tip, that stuff is everywhere now. It used to be you just go into a restaurant and you have a waiter or waitress and you tip them, but now it's like everything. They go get coffee, you go get stuff, where no one's really waiting on you. They're paid full wage to do their job, and it will ask you for a tip. It's like built into everything here. It's like maddening. It's gone just a little out of hand, I think. It's crazy. And then now I've noticed that it would automatically select 25% now on the tip instead of like 20 or 15 or 18. So yeah, it's getting crazy over here.
So the dreaded tip, or at least it was dreaded to me when I first moved to America. Actually, when I landed at Philadelphia Airport, this is the first time I remember having to sort of navigate the American tipping system because I bought a drink at a bar at that very airport. And having bought the Jack Daniels, or 6, I'm not a good flyer. I turned to the gentleman next to me and I asked him, "How does tipping work?" And, he very, very kindly offered, well, whatever the amount is on your receipt, just give them 85% of that. And that's about good. That's standard. That
85%.
And I ended up almost bankrupt. Firstly, in the United States, regardless of the amount, it's very much expected that you do tip because that's basically how servers make their wage. And the standard amount that you're expected to tip is the complete opposite of 85%. It's 15%, right? But if you thought it was good service, or just to be sort of a good person, really, you can definitely tip more than that. I typically tip. Just try saying that after 6 whiskeys. I did that night. I typically tip, particularly if I'm on a trip, 20%, or I might even round up to 21 if it kind of requires it. Tipping of some kind is expected here. In the UK, if you're thinking of going there, firstly, don't do that right now, but if after all this blows over you are fancying going to the UK, then you're not required to tip at all, right?
Exactly.
I mean, people get paid a sort of living wage more or less for being a server in the UK. It's good practice. If you want to do that, you certainly can.
Okay, I guess in the United Kingdom, if you did tip, it won't offend anyone, it looks like. Well, at least according to him here, so. Interesting.
Living wage, more or less, for being a server in the UK. It's good practice. If you want to do that, you certainly can. 10% is recommended. And, growing up in the UK, I never really did tip all that often, I must say. I think if I were to live there now, I probably would do so a bit more. It's not expected. I mean, servers aren't going to expect you to tip. Although, if they hear your accent and you are American, their ears might prick up a bit thinking, here comes a payday, right? Whereas it's the other way round here. As soon as servers hear a British accent, they must be filled with dread. Or maybe that's not true. Maybe servers hear a British accent and think, he's ripe for manipulation. You know, I've had some bad experiences.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the things I thought about and worked out. They're gonna be like, "Oh, he's American, man." It's like you said, it's gonna. Oh, I'm gonna get a payday. You know, and I'll get this American the tip, or take advantage of you being a tourist, being from a different country.
A British accent and think, he's ripe for manipulation. You know, I've had some bad experiences. That's it for this episode. Thank you for joining me today. And, it's kind of sad that I couldn't practice a lot of these things for the video, except for the knives and forks, and those were the last plastics I have. As ever, a reminder that you can keep up with me and all my stupid ramblings on Twitter at LostInThePondUS. And if you've not had a chance to do so, why not subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost?
Yeah, go check them out.
As ever, a big shout out to all my patrons who make spoons like this one possible. If you would like to become a patron of Lost in the Pond, you can do so at patreon.com/LostInThePond. Until next time, keep eating, keep happy, and I will see you soon.
All right, everyone. So that was the 5 ways British and American meal etiquette are different. Thanks to Lost in the Pond. If you haven't, go check him out. He makes some awesome videos. Make sure you subscribe to him if you like. And so true. He is spot on pretty much everything. At least the American part of it, I can definitely confirm. I do a lot of that. That's how I do my meal etiquette quite a bit. Now, saying grace part, no, I don't do that. Used to when I was when I was a kid, I was forced to do that, but now, I just look forward to the food. Well, that's it for now, everyone. If you like what you saw, hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. If you do, hit the bell icon. You'll be notified when I upload new videos. And then until next time, y'all take care, alright? Peace.